Are we going to get a Snyders this time? This is Buffalo River heat treated 600 degrees Fahrenheit. We shall see. It's already getting hot. It's supposed to be over 100 today. Fun stuff. Fun in quotation marks. Alright, so a little bit of percussion. Try to get some nice thinning flakes. There's a bulb of percussion there for the initial removal. Definitely need to get rid of that because there's many times incipient cracks in those areas. But looks pretty good. I don't see any issues with that particular bulb of percussion, which tells me the guy that spalled it knew what he was doing. Now when I miss like that, part of it is depth perception. If I wear glasses or goggles, I lose my depth perception. But I can't do it with my naked eyes anymore. I got to use some sort of magnifiers. Let's see if I can get this on the first strike. No. I'm trying to hit that. It's a little bit above center line. It's a little bit not good because it's got cortex. Let's see. If I hit it too many times, you know what happens. Let's try it one more time here. I hit the right spot, but not strong enough to carry the flake all the way. So, it's got to push in instead of, crushing and stuff. Crushing sometimes will cause the rippling effect. Sometimes the rippling is caused by just chatter on the face and not the crushing, just regular chatter. I got some incipient cracks, but I'm not going to do play by play on this one. Nope. Takes too long and I lose my train of thought, or my train of non-thinking, I should say. But it's not the kind of non-thinking you're thinking about. The non-thinking, what I mean by that is I'm letting the subconscious do most of the work, but in a rational way, not in an emotional way. In a rational way, that means that my subconscious knows what to do because it's done it over and over and over again. Like that, it knows how much force to apply to get that sort of flake. It knows how to swing so that I can get a flake removal on the fly. Or on the slide, I mean. It knows how to get a flake removal while I'm sliding this across, because I'm coming down with a downward motion, scraping, swiping, or scratching, or whatever you want to call it. You use this type of strike with natural materials especially. Okay? Hammerstone with a flat spot, antler with a flat spot, ivory with a flat spot, sometimes wood with a flat spot. That's what you're doing. Swiping. And if you isolate the platform, the swipe is easier because it'll hit. You've got a little bit of range and play, a little bit of range that way and this way if you have a flat. If you have a round, you got to hit square on. You got to hit dead on, bullseye with a rounded billet. Yeah, why didn't that work? Well, it worked. It's just kind of crushy because I didn't isolate that platform, so I hit other areas. Okay, let's see. Snyders are kind of thin, I think. I've slept since I looked them up. Can't remember, but I'm pretty sure Snyders are on the thin side. I said it before on the last video, but Snyders is one of the easiest points to make with natural tools. Okay. If you're following along with antler and stuff, you know, you're sitting there napping with a piece of antler, watching this video, like I know some of you guys do. A lot of techniques with aluminum work for antler as well, because it dimples. Aluminum will dimple just like antler. Aluminum will grip. Now, does it act exactly the same? No, of course not. The aluminum is the same weight as hammerstone by volume, which is heavier than antler. But it dimples like antler. So it's like having a super heavy antler. And no one's going to confuse your point for a real one, because you're going to deposit aluminum onto the workpiece. You can see it in the microscope. You can see little deposits of aluminum along the blade edge and sometimes on the surface. So if you're worried about being accused of making fakes, just use some aluminum. You'll see, and then on close inspection, you'll see the deposits, and you know it's modern. Can you get rid of the deposits on the edge? Yep. But it requires removal of some of the edge. How do you get rid of a deposit like that on the flake without maybe some kind of chemical that would dissolve the aluminum? You would have to mechanically remove it, which will remove some of this edge. And you can kind of tell because it'll be abraded or slightly polished or weirdly worn. And if you look under a microscope, you'll see those. They'll be very tiny, but you'll see those along the edge of a modern napped point, for those who didn't know. Okay, so that's as far as I want to take it with direct percussion. Oh, maybe one more. Let's see. Then we'll switch to indirect percussion. Yeah, I don't like when that happens. One more direct percussion hit. See if we can do it and strike right down there. Let's see if we can do it. Pool our minds together and make it happen. Did it do it? Close enough. Yep, close enough. I hit it kind of hard though, because I wanted it to go. We'll see if I messed it up later. We will see. Yeah, I still should have plenty of width. Yep. Plenty of width. Okay. Now we're getting into the territory that I've been in many times. And I can let the subconscious do a lot of the work. Actually, I don't know if I want to save this particular flake because it's got an undetached fracture. Save these two. All right. We'll get a Snyders one of these times. You didn't grind it. What's up? Supposed to grind it before the indirect percussion. Don't have to. Just doesn't work as well. But it's in the early stage. I think that's why many early stage workpieces, bifaces, trade blanks, cash blades don't have much abrading or grinding, because it's initial stages. It doesn't really matter too much to be perfect. But if you're like a modern napper, every stage has to be pretty. So if you're a modern napper, make sure you make every stage pretty now. Make sure. But if you want to do it like they used to do it and not be like a modern napper, go kind of crazy in the beginning, you know? Don't care if it's all wonky. You don't need to be making it pretty every step of the way, if you want to do it like they used to. Only modern nappers make it beautiful every step of the way. That's a modern trait. Yeah, but there's some points that have to be made perfectly every step of the way, because it will break if you don't. Yeah, there are some like Folsom that have to be very carefully done from start to finish. I'm not going to deny that. But who's making Folsoms watching this video? There's one guy in the back going, me, I'm doing one. Put it on video, dude. If you're doing it with natural tools with no jigs, we want to see it. Hand quickly goes down, retracts just like a snail being hit with salt. Hand goes right back down. Oh, I'm not really making one. Yeah. Funny how that works. Okay. There's always an exception to the rule, right? I'll bring up the exception too. It'll sound like I'm contradicting myself, but I'm just bringing up the exception. There are some points, like Folsom, that you've got to make pretty every step of the way. But it's rare. It's one of those rare things. Right? But it is an exception to the rule. It is an exception. So, if I want to say that they were all made haphazardly in the beginning, that would be a false statement. Although when I say the way they used to do it was haphazard, when I say that, it sounds like a false statement. It is if I'm being literal, if I'm just speaking statistically, which is kind of literal, but it's statistically speaking, in the majority of cases, then it's valid to say it that way. But in today's discourse environment, you'll get all kinds of stuff in rebuttal, right? Well, you said that one exception breaks the rule. That's your saying. You're not even paying attention to that. So, that's true. I got to qualify it with a explanation that statistically speaking, the majority, or the way they used to do it, is haphazardly in the beginning. Relatively haphazardly. Not like modern nappers that want to see a beautiful, precise, methodical, step by step very professional looking progression from start to finish. So statistically speaking, if you want to do it like they used to do it, the last stages are the most important. Luckily, the last stages are what we can see in the artifacts. So ironically, is it ironically? What archaeologists think are very important steps that occur in the beginning are really not all that important. So the fact that we can't see the initial steps doesn't really matter all that much. I'm finding that the last steps, the ones that we can actually see, are actually the most important of the steps as far as the technology goes. You can make the preforms with almost any tool. You can quarry stone with almost any method, relatively speaking. But the refinement of the points is what sometimes requires special tools, special techniques, special skills, special cultures, etc., etc. It's the final stages that require all this specialization. Now that's my assessment. Who am I to make that assessment? Nobody. I'm a nobody. You're supposed to challenge that. If you just accept that blindly, if you accept my assessment blindly, it's a compliment. You know, I don't mind you trusting me, but test it out. Don't take my word for it. Just test it out. Look at artifacts. And all that. Alright, so it's getting kind of thin. Now I got to pay attention to the final stages. Like if I wanted to, this is where I stop. Every time you have to stop for a breather and say, okay, what's next? I'm getting kind of in a spot where it's requiring a different mindset. That's a stage in my assessment. Again, you know, explore it. Maybe you don't have stages. Maybe you're the type that doesn't have stages and hates the stages. You just want to get right to it. You're engrossed in it until from start to finish. No breaks. You just engrossed in it. If you take a break, it'll mess it all up. If that's the way you do it, please continue to do it that way. I don't do it that way, right? So I don't do it that way on video or when I'm napping off camera. I do have stages. I go, okay, I gotta make a decision. Do I want to continue this, or should I set it aside like my other blades? I just did this one this morning. I did this one the other night. I set these aside. What else? That's it for now, right? This is the two latest ones before this one. I would normally set these three aside and start another one. But since it's a video for a Snyders, I'm going to continue. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, Snyders is notched. I got to make sure the base is thin enough. The notches aren't that involved. Is the blade in good shape? No, it still needs some thinning. Where am I going to attack it? Is there excess material that I can use to run flakes from? Like if I wanted to thin it down, is there a bulge like this that I can run flakes in to thin it? Yes. So I'm going to probably try to use this edge to run flakes. Not probably, definitely. Wherever there's a bulge, that's where I try to run flakes from, because you're going to lose it. But if you're going to lose it, might as well lose it while using it. I had to trim that off, but might as well use it. That's why overshots are so annoying in my view, because you're losing too much that you could have used to do other stuff with it. You could run, nice parallel flaking or some other thing on that edge that you lost. Okay, anyway. And for those of you who do not know, a lot of technologies employ the overshot, it seems, right? It seems like there are either a lot of technologies that employ overshot, or overshot is the underlying technology of many techniques, right? One of the two, or maybe two, maybe combined, or some other variation. In my view, overshots are a symptom, a result, a consequence of the technology of thinning. Because there are many types of flakes involved in thinning, not just overshot. Overshot is a subset of the umbrella of thinning. That's my assessment. Well, who are you to make that assessment? I'm nobody. Test it out. See if that's true. When do you get overshots? When you're not thinning? I don't think so. Okay. Beauty. Thinning flake, but it's a beauty because it went past halfway, but there's some problems with it. Took off a little too much edge, and the termination is not feathered, it's steppy, right? But if the step fracture is past halfway, like right here, relatively easy to eliminate. This one might be a problem up there. But if it's too much of a problem, guess what? You leave it in. Because you're trying to do it like they used to do it. A modern napper would go, no, can't leave it in. Blend it out, or whatever the terminology you guys are creating and making up along the way. Okay. Same thing on that side. A little bit steppy. That's what I mean when I'm saying steppy material. See how the terminations are steppy instead of feathery? This one was almost a step. It's steppy material. Nothing you can do about it. It's just going to do it. See that? A little bit of steppiness. That's just part of the material. One of the characteristics. So if I say the material is steppy, that's what I mean. The terminations are not going to be feathery, feathered out, or clean, or however you want to describe it. Someone came up with the term feather termination. Seems appropriate. I think that terminology is used in other crafts as well. Like in painting, you feather out the the borders when you're doing an artistic painting. Sometimes you feather the border of the border between two colors or more. Anyway, that's where that comes from, I think. And if the material is steppy, plan on your finished product having some steps. I mean, just plan on it. Going, yep, supposed to be a step. Yep, supposed to be. Because it's just part of the characteristics. Don't get all bent out of shape. Snyders. Think Snyders. Snyders sometimes is oh gosh, it's kind of, the point goes inward, but I'm not going to make one of those really stubby pointed ones. I hope. The blade is getting thin enough now that I don't have to continue thinning, I don't think. I'm going to taper it from this thickness down. So this is going to get thinner here, which is pretty easy, relatively speaking, to run flakes here. Now, the hard part now is to get the base thin enough so that the notching is not going to be an issue, a problem, or too much of a problem. Okay. Best way to regularize the edge, raise your hand if you know. With patience, lots of pressure, time. Yep. Several correct answers there. All right. Yeah, if it's not ground down too much, you can do it with pressure. I'm going to warm up. There we go. Get the wrist, get the forearm muscles warmed up. Use leg compression. Whoever thought of that was a genius. Not kidding. This leg compression stuff for pressure flaking. I don't remember if Ishii did that. I don't know if he uses legs to help with the compression with his Ishii stick. Ishii never really used a long stick. He used a relatively short one, maybe a foot long at the most. The sticks that were in Ishii's kit were relatively short compared to modern standards. In case you didn't know. And a lot of people who are fans of Ishii, the Indian, haven't really read much about him. So you may think it odd to know stuff like Ishii thought that if you mounted your arrowhead this way so that it shoots from the bow, aligned onto the bow, like the blade length, or not, the blade width parallel to the bow will cause the arrow to go between the ribs of deer, the arrowhead to go between the ribs of deer. He believed that if you mounted the arrowhead with the width parallel to the bow, it would shoot and penetrate more easily between the ribs of a deer, for example. Okay. He believed that. In reality, arrowheads spin. So when it makes contact with the target, you don't know where it's going to be. You have no idea. He didn't realize this or refused to believe it or whatever. If you didn't know that, you have not read enough about Ishii. Just saying. Now, why is that important? Well, it's a cultural thing. It's not a scientific belief. It's a cultural belief. And that affected the way he mounted the arrowheads onto the arrow shafts. Same sort of cultural influences can influence how a point is hafted to a stick. For example, the explanation of why something has certain notches is not always in the physics. All right, just to give you an idea. All right, I'm out of time. I'll continue on the next segment.